panelists of other marketers who are in the business of turning customers into fans. And if you could all join me, if the three of you could join me on stage. What I'd like to ask all of you is, let's make this an interactive panel. I have a few questions to get started with, but we'll make this much better if you guys are asking the questions. Beth, do we have a handheld mic? Or the room is probably small enough that we can actually work? So I'd like to, I'll get a little bit closer. See if we can do this in the order in which you are seating. Give me one moment, find the right piece of paper. Love your microphone. Nanne Boss is head of brand strategy identity at ING. Would you like to say a few words about yourself and your role?
Yeah, my name is Nanne. It's a very old Dutch name, so that's important. But I have been responsible for the ING brand globally since a year or so. Previously, I was working in the insurance business. I think my main challenge going forward is, now that we are, as a company, coming out of the crisis and the restructuring, is to align the brand with the future direction of ING. In some markets, we are close to being a love brand. In other markets, like the Netherlands, we are close to be one of the most. We have big reputational issues, or we had, and we're slowly getting out of it. So that's the challenge I have. So I see both in the business.
Good. Thank you very much. Carolyn Vogel Meyer is head of social for KLM. Any frequent flyers out there with the KLM program? Familiar with the brand, obviously. Anyone regularly tweet KLM when you're either delighted or awesome? That's great. So we have some real world experience. Why don't you tell us about yourself? Tell us about your role within KLM.
Well, I'm responsible for the strategy regarding social media within KLM, and we do that together with, I work for the eCommerce department, which is kind of different from what you see in most companies where social media is the responsibility of marketing. Within KLM, it is the responsibility of e-commerce together with corporate communications. And we work in close cooperation with marketing to define the strategy. You're talking about turning customers into fans. If you talk about social, for us, it is about turning fans into customers. Because what we see on social is that we have, approximately 50 million followers on different platforms. We have 6 million followers on Facebook, and most of them haven't been flying with us at all, but they are following us, and they are following us for a long period of time. So there is something about loyalty where those people really like the brand KLM, and what we want to do with them is turn them into customers. But that could be customers regarding flying customers, but that could also be very good ambassadors or people that are gaming with us a lot, because we're into the gaming industry as well. So it's like turning the world upside down, I think.
Good, thank you. That's a great tip-off, and I think we'll dive into that a little bit more. Sabrina Naouri.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
You're an online marketing expert. You've worked with a number of different companies, including Nokia, ING. Don't know if this is the first time you two have met.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Rabobank, Telfort, an example. And what you've done in your career is you've focused on social media yourself, implementing it. But obviously that's built on a longer career, even before social media, so you can kind of take that background. I'm sure we all can before we hit social media. So a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll get started with a few questions.
I think that it's very important to help brands get the message out there in a consistent way. And you're right, it doesn't only have to do with social media, it has to do with a complete communication funnel. And what I like to do is just dive in there and see what we can enhance or make better. Yeah.
Good. We'll start back at that end and we'll work our way through. And I'd like to talk about, as I said, my third trend was this emotional connection with brand. Let's for a moment throw away that rational decision and the value proposition and all those elements that we know are so core to the way that many of us market. Let's go to the emotional connection, which is in your minds and in your work, what is the ways in which you create deep emotional connections with your customers so they do think of you first? Let's start with KLM, and then we'll work our way back to ING and towards me.
Well, if we look at the social side, our strategy is based upon 3 pillars, which is servicing, brand and reputation, and commerce. We believe that people have a reason to follow us, and that is servicing. You can ask us anything 24/7 in 10 languages, and shortly there will be some languages added. You can ask us anything and we answer you within an hour, and shortly that will be half an hour, because we see that the customer is asking for faster, faster, faster. We answer any question. We get about 35,000 a week. And you spoke about that before. Data is extremely important to us, because if somebody is asking us the same question over and over again, or making the same complaint over and over again regarding I lost my luggage, I had a delay, or whatever, it's really annoying if you get the same general answer every time again. So to us, everybody that is asking us a question, we filter all those questions. We get them into the Salesforce system. We use Salesforce. And based on all the data that we get, we can give you a personal answer. And I think, well, KLM is pretty strong at that. We have about 130 FTE working worldwide, answering all those questions. That is the main reason why people want to follow us. But as I told you before, we have a lot of people that are not flying with us and that are still following our brand. And we know that people are following a limited amount of brands, because in your timeline, you have your friends, you have your family, you're talking with your children or cousins or whatever. And if there is a brand giving you general advertising content, that is really, really annoying. And what we always say is, you are a guest at somebody else's party, so behave as a guest at somebody else's party. Which means if you want to place content on social as a brand, make it personal and relevant and make it worth sharing. If you do that really well, we truly believe that you can turn people into fans of your brand. And well, within KLM, we're doing a okay job, I guess, because we have a lot of fans. If you do those 2 right, so if you do the servicing right, if you do the brand and reputation part really good, then eventually you can turn those fans into customers. And we do that with personalized offers regarding flying to specific destinations where we know that people want to fly to. I cannot give you any amounts, but we're making really well money on social. And that is not a couple of thousand euros, that is about millions. So social is a channel which is really worth looking into, but don't use it as display or whatever. It is a personalized social media platform, and you have to use it that way.
I want to get to the other 2, but you spoke of something that I think a lot of people in the audience have a question about. I know that globally, a lot of people have this question, and an aspect of an emotional connection is relevance.
Yes.
And you've mentioned that you're able to essentially have a personal conversation with social, and I think that that is probably surprising to a lot of marketers, not just in this room, but around the world, which is how can you use a social channel which is inherently, without having a one-to-one DM relationship with someone, how do you use social, and which channels do you use on social to have a relevant relationship or conversation with a consumer versus what would be considered a mass, albeit social? How do you go from mass to personal within social?
Well, that is mainly data. We are really active on Facebook and Twitter, but we're active on other platforms as well, like VKontakte in Russia. You need to be on VKontakte if you want to be big in Russia. Sina Weibo in China. You can do anything on Facebook and Twitter, but they can't receive it. So China is a really important market to us, so we need to be on Sina Weibo. We're looking into one-to-few platforms where people are moving to, like WeChat. We're taking a close look at WhatsApp. Their API isn't open yet, but we're really looking into what is happening there right now. So the first one to make the conversation personalized is be on the platforms where your customers are. So that to us is Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, V-contacten, Sina, Weibo, etc. The second one is data. If you want to know who your customers are, first of all, you need to know who they are. Because if you send out general messages, it will annoy people and they will unfriend you and they never come back again. Because you're competing in the social world not only with, in our case, airlines, but we're competing with Nike and Ajax and Victoria's Secret. And if you know that people are only following a limited amount of brands, then you really have to be really good to be better than Nike and all those other brands. So you need data to know who is on the other side. And that can be your own data, so social logins and stuff like that, but that can also be using Facebook data as well. The story about organic posts that are going viral, that's really nice, but in this time there are only very limited posts that are doing that. So the truth is you need to pay to reach the right audience. So use Facebook advertising. Twitter is going into that as well. LinkedIn is going into that as well. You really have to go deep into the channels to know who you are talking to. So it's data and being on the right platform.
Nanne, can a financial institution have an emotional relationship with consumers?
Well, there are a few angles to that, I would say. The first is, if you look at all the emotions around banks, you could say yes. And we have recently worked on the new strategic direction for ING globally for the brand. We've done a lot of research across markets. And it's maybe a no-brainer for many people, but there we find that, although we, as marketeers within the bank, tend to believe that people are thinking about us all the time, most of the people don't. A bank is just in the background. That said, if you look at what we have done with ING Direct, for example, in the US, leaving the US, actually there were a number of consumers that organized themselves to trying to prevent the ING brand leaving the market. So obviously there was a very close emotional relationship going on. So yes, it is possible, but in the current context, there are different levels to that. So the basics is the financial stability for a bank. So if there's any doubt about you being capable of staying in the business, and we had that
yes.
in the past few years, what is the relationship? So, and the highest level is the value congruence, and that's where you connect with your customer on values and on emotional side. But you need those layers below to really actually get to that point where you can start talking about. And I guess that the crisis, has set us back quite a bit. Although for ING in some markets we always have been in the opposite position of the traditional bank. So that's where it works completely the other way around.
So you're suggesting trust is actually a huge aspect. So there are a number of aspects of any emotional relationship with a brand. You talked about relevance previously from the standpoint in which channels, in which languages, and how you're responding. We mentioned kind of trust is a big factor. What's the role of relevance from the standpoint of, now let's kind of getting into loyalty marketing as an example, where we have access to more information, where we can kind of customize messaging and we can essentially change experiences based on the products which you have, your wealth, your value potential, your share of wallet, et cetera. But what has been the role of essentially seeking to become better and better with relevance in terms of essentially creating more loyal customers within your institution?
So I don't know if I understand your question right, but if it comes to trust, I think if you look at the core of the ING brand, the promise, it has to do a lot with empowerment. So we have been looking in research so when are banks really making the difference? And banks can make the difference, although people tend to be very negative on the sector, on the financial services sector as a whole, as a result of all the media exposure we had. We also see that banks can make the difference in the life of our customers. We looked for stories throughout Europe where banks played this role, and these are stories about life-changing events, about getting the loan at the right time, or an advisor of the bank helping you to make the right decision, basically. So banks can make the difference. For ING, our the main thing that we see is that we want to empower or help people to make their decisions, to take basically, stop saying, trust us, we will take care of your finances. It's much more, maybe you shouldn't have trusted banks in the first place, and you should start trusting yourself more. So that's maybe a fundamental change in terms of saying we want to earn the trust back. Start saying, we have a fundamental belief in the potential of people to take charge of their finances, and our role is to enable that and to help people.
You used a word that I very much liked earlier, empowerment, which is to say that by giving people more control over their financial success and giving them the tools to which to do so, in effect, they begin trusting themselves, and you essentially become the shepherd or the steward of that responsibility to essentially create that emotional connection. The emotional connection is as much with their families, to which they are supporting, as it is with the bank, which is facilitating it, personifies it to a greater extent.
Yes.
Very, very interesting. Let's continue to build on that from that standpoint.
Sure.
And another aspect of turning customers into fans is truly showing them that you value them. I think that for too long, we made customers into customers by giving them money off, by discounting. And we've never done as a great job as a marketer, with the exception of a few brands, actually identifying people who are most valuable and letting them know it, whether we surprise them or just fundamentally we reach. I'm sure that's an aspect of your social strategy. But over the companies that you've worked with, can you share some examples how they've gone out of their way to identify customers, consumers, passengers, guests, and actually do something very special that says, you're valuable to us, and we're going to show you that independently of what might just be a discount?
Yeah. Well, right now we've been pretty much talking about social and the differences between, I think, products and services types and things like that, using the different channels, and really looking at what target group uses which channel. Of course, the baby boomers use different channels than, for example, the X generation or the millennials. And I think that instead of adjusting your message towards each of these channels, it's continuing distributing the same message throughout every channel, but getting that one-on-one connection. In the store, a salesperson is not helping 10 people at the same time. There's one salesperson helping another person. And I think, although we've now come into an age where we have a lot of new possibilities from communication, the way we communicate should still be the same. One-on-one, from me to you, and the message, that's whatever the brand wants to say to their customer to make them feel special. And that has a lot to do with their USPs, and I think also product type and the engagement with the product. For a phone, it's very different than to a mortgage. And KLM has, of course, already the sense of traveling and joy, and that has a much more positive vibe than taking out or needing a mortgage and looking at banks which you perhaps don't trust. Okay, maybe.
Or I do trust now.
Or getting a new phone, or getting a new subscription. It has a very different value in everyday life, I think, and it's looking at that, as well. Yeah.
Do you have, in financial services, do you have the ability to surprise and delight, or are you constrained by regulations and rules?
Of course, we have a lot of regulation rules, but for sure, no. I think there will be. I think somebody used the word anticipation already, and so we have been looking in this research to where do banks make the difference, and where can you really surprise your customers? And we have found, in terms of empowerment, that this is where the bank is really thinking. You have the feeling that the bank is one step ahead of you, basically. in terms of it could be an offer, the right offer at the right moment, or the right question at the right moment, or the right information at the right moment, or providing the right insight at the right moment, or just even before your customer is really thinking about that. There is still a, I guess for ING there's still a world to win, and we have a lot of information in the company and to get to that point. So that's where the future will be, and that has to do with dynamic segmentation. This is where you would start to use your data in a way that it really provides value for your customers, and that you really can that's where you make the difference.
In airline, you have an opportunity, and unfortunately you probably, as all of us, any of us who are frequent travelers, you have to deal with lost luggage through your channels. You have to deal with delayed flights. You have to deal with mechanicals. You have to deal with occasionally unhappy customers. But you do have an opportunity to selectively upgrade. You do have an opportunity to do some things that are really incredibly kind and generous for your customers. Do you use, first of all, is that essentially communicated through the social channel, or when it does happen by a gate agent, the extent to which people are saying thank you via social channels back to you? And do you feel the need to take credit using social, or is it okay to allow that to be a viral message versus one which you promote?
Well, of course, we hear all the complaints, because the first thing people do is when they're not happy with the fact that they're not being upgraded or something, they send a tweet or a post or whatever, and they just say KLM sucks, and I was asking for the upgrade and I have the points, and now they're telling me that there's no space available or something like that. So the complaints, as you hear. The compliments also, we get a lot of compliments, especially regarding airline staff, cabin attendants, and we get all those compliments and we send them to the relevant departments within the company. I think the interesting fact about social is it is not only about those conversations and about those conversations going viral. What we find out is because we have so many conversations with our customers, with those 35,000 questions every week, we exactly know what the customer is asking about. So what we can do right now, and that is the interesting fact of social, is that we can change things within our company right now. So we know that, for instance, people lose a lot of stuff on aircrafts, and they send in a tweet and they say, hey, have you found my iPad, or have you found my iPhone, or something like that. And usually we would give them an answer like, okay, you have to fill in this form, and then after 5 days you can call us, and maybe we have found it, but we don't know because it's the responsibility of Schiphol. In 20% of those things, we found back the stuff that people were asking for. What we did is we put somebody from the social department on Schiphol, and we said, hey, this question is coming in. Could you check the systems and see if you can combine those systems and find out where the iPad is, and then immediately send a message to the person that it belongs to. And by changing processes, we believe that we can improve the processes within our company. So yes, we get the messages, we get a lot of messages, but if you're talking about loyal people, I think it is about structurally solving the problems that they are facing. And well, social is giving us a lot of opportunities, because you were talking about one-to-one contact. Yeah. The advantage of social is, instead of being on the phone, you can only be on the phone with one person, but with social, you can have 10 conversations at the same time, because you're asking for one question, for one answer from within your company, and at the same time, you can answer another question. So yes, the conversation is personal, but still, it is less time consuming than being on the phone all the time.
Sabrina, if you were to essentially work, and we're running out of time, so I'll save time for a few questions at the end of this, but if you had a few pieces of advice for essentially what you've seen in your past for maybe the 2 or 3 best ways to really think about turning customers into fans, what would those 3 lessons be for the group out here?
Well, I think first of all, and Carolyn said it as well, you can't do it on your own. So I think in the beginning of the whole social phase, we were very much thinking, okay, we have to make everybody social savvy. But but I think it's not about making every employee or every internal process social savvy, but including it into the processes that you're doing. So I think that's very important because, I mean, your employees are your most valuable brand ambassadors.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, for any brand, that's the same. And yeah, again, I think it's also important that it's the right channels and the right media types. And I mean, there are still people that like to do things by phone. So, I mean, we want to make the shift to online, but let's not forget that, I mean, these old communication devices, yeah, are still there. And even with our smartphone, we can still make a call. So, and third of all, I think it's very important not to be afraid as a brand. So not be afraid of what the customer might say. Maybe it's because of the new technology that we're, yeah, just not really used to communicating that way. But in the end, it's the same. Yeah, and that's what we do. So we're trying to find out what our target group wants, what our customer wants, and the only way we can find out is by asking them, communicating, talking to them, and if it's through social, a chat, webcam,
or even a telephone call.
or a telephone call, yeah. So,
Anyone out there, any questions for our panelists? If not, I'll kind of wrap things up with a summary. Delighted to have some questions. We have.
Okay, I have a few questions for Carolyn of KLM. In the beginning, you said you have 6 million followers on Facebook, and that you found out that a lot of them are not actually flying. But how would you know that?
Facebook knows practically everything from you. And as a brand, they give you the opportunity to look into all those things. So that is interesting because we know, for instance, we have a lot of fans in countries where we're not flying to pretty regularly. For instance, Brazil is a very important market to us, but we only fly to Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. But we have a lot of fans in the rest of Brazil as well. So combining information that we have as KLM and information that Facebook gives us, you can see within the Facebook data where your fans are. They don't give you names, but they give you the regions. We see average age and stuff like that. And what we also do is Facebook offers you a lot of opportunity to make custom audiences, lookalikes and stuff like that. So what we do is we combine the data that we have within KLM with things that we know from Facebook. And the interesting fact is that because you know a lot of things about your customer, you can offer them those things that they really like themselves. So as you also said, for instance, we had an offer to Paramaribo, having a low-load flight, so a lot of open spaces on the flight in August from Amsterdam to Paramaribo. And in October, going back from Paramaribo to Amsterdam, so we could offer them a really good price, but they had to stay for 2 months. And that is, you know, if you put it on display or an email or something, people say like, what, this is ridiculous. But what we did is we targeted this specific offer to people that we know of are interested in Paramaribo because they fly there occasionally. That's KLM data. We know that from persons. Or because from Facebook, we know that they are interested in Paramaribo because they place a lot of posts about Suriname or stuff like that. So we targeted that on that specific audience group, and we immediately filled all the flights. And then it's not like spam, it's not like a regular advertisement, but you send it to the people that are waiting for specific offers like that. And I believe if you talk about loyalty, that is what people want. And they don't want everything being spammed with offers to New York and Dubai and stuff like that. They only want the stuff that they are interested in. And if you do that really well, then I believe that you can, get fans for life.
Okay,
Excellent.
thank you. Can I ask two more questions actually? Have you integrated flying blue messaging in your KLM social media strategy?
We are actually combining the two, but it's a really interesting question. I was talking about that before. Flying Blue is Air France KLM, and social media. On social media, the two brands are separated. So it's really difficult to say like, okay, as KLM we're working on that, and Air France is working on that as well, and we're learning from each other. But yes, we are integrating it. There are Flying Blue people sitting in our service hub. So if you ask a question as a Flying Blue member and you send it to KLM, you get a question and answer back, which is based on KLM data and Flying Blue data. And Air France is doing the same. But there is a big field to win. Yeah.
Okay, and the last question I have, do you see a shift from the complaints and compliments from the traditional phone or to social, or is it extra what you get through social?
It used to be extra, but right now we believe that it's getting more normal to send a compliment or a complaint via social. But there is one thing which you really should be cautious about. In the Netherlands, people don't care about putting complaints on social and everybody reading it, everybody reading the post in which you say that you don't like KLM. What we see, for instance, in Japan, we are also active in Japan. In Japan, that's losing face. If you just put a complaint on social, being able to, and everybody can read that, you're not going to tell in front of a million audiences, because that's what you talk about on social, that KLM didn't give you the space that you were asking for instance. You do that in a one-to-one conversation. So yes, we see things happening, but on the other hand, you also see that people sometimes feel a little bit more comfortable telling it on the phone or via an old-fashioned form.
Is there I assume you have different levels of customer service via telephone for your most elite frequent travelers versus those that are general. Do you still find that your more elite frequent travelers crave, I'll go back to something you were saying about the importance of the telephone. Do you find that your most elite frequent travelers want to have the one-to-one telephonic or voice relationship, or they are equally comfortable using social?
It really
For customer service.
it's really up to the person. I mean, we see a lot of frequent flyers and elite passengers being really active on Twitter and Facebook. So they have no problem with asking the question via Twitter or Facebook.
And do you prioritize your response or
No.
the nature of your response by frequent flyer status?
No, everybody is the same. And that is because we believe on social, if you do that, you get it back immediately. I mean, we saw that with Doutzen Kroes filing a complaint because she wanted an upgrade for her husband. And she has millions of followers. So, in the end, we found out a way to make her satisfied as well. But you also see a lot of negative reactions to that from normal people, if I can mention them that way. So we believe on social, everybody is the same. And if you talk about virality, people are responding immediately to things that they see happening on social, and it doesn't matter who it is.
I want to thank you three. Just to summarize, these were the points that I really took out of this, which is the essence of this emotional connection with the brand. And we'll start with each of the panelists. Is the one that struck me that really gave me pause for thought was this idea of controller empowerment, which is to say when you can essentially give a consumer or a customer empowerment over his or her relationship with your brand, that's a very important aspect of creating that emotional connection. Next of which is this idea of relevance, which is you really brought up, which is to say be in the right channels with the right voice, with the right offer, and really truly having an understanding around that. Another thing you talked about I thought was very interesting was consistency.
Yeah.
So whether it is a social channel or an email channel or a paid media channel or a telephone channel, or frankly your gate agents for that matter, is your discussion that you had around the upgrade at the gate. The idea of consistency in common systems, that you don't get one answer via social that you might get differently at the gate. So I think that the three of you really brought together some elements that really have nothing to do with, I'm going to do a better job with my database and I'm going to send out better direct marketing or whatever it might be. You really hit the essence of that personal connection. I want to thank the three of you. I'd also encourage you to look for the three of them. I know you'll be doing a roundtable later. I don't know if the two of you will be sticking around, but hopefully you can have some, you'll speak at 2. So hopefully you all can have some one-on-one time to network with our panelists, because this panel went by incredibly quickly. So again, thank you, the three of you. Hope to touch base with all three of you later as well, because I know I had some follow-up questions that are lingering myself. So again, thank you. And I'd like to welcome up our next panel.